and raised in Brooklyn. We're recording it for the people that weren't able to make it. So I hope everybody's okay with that. So I was born and raised in Brooklyn. So I'm just amazed at all the people that are still actively researching their family from a small town in Bessarabia. It's just amazing, and the fact that we're from all over the United States and all over the world. My mother was born in Yedinitz, and her whole family, her parents, my aunts and uncles, they all came to New York back in 1930. And my grandparents, I never met, and I'm named after my grandfather. It was Abraham. I'm Alan. My middle name is Ira. My grandmother's name was Ida. So I carry them with me. I've always felt very close to my mother's side of the family because of that. I don't want to talk about my father's side of the family. So anyway, so Yvette asked me to be the coordinator. She was interested in restarting, and I don't know if you recognize the name, but Eric Schwartzman is on the call here. He was the original coordinator for the translation of the Yedinitz Yizkor project. So yeah, big shout out to him because he's the one who got it started. So
thank you.
And I'm just happy to be a part of this process as well. So how many people, just a quick show of hands, how many people have actually read some of the online translated book? Oh, that's pretty good. It's constantly changing. So as we get the translations from the translators, and we send them to Jewish Gen to post them. So there's movement. You know, if you've logged in last week and you want to log in again, you might see a different article that's now been translated. I just want to introduce quickly my two colleagues, Yvette and Ed. If you want to just.
All right, I could go. I'm Ed Berkowitz. I live in Virginia. I got started in genealogy in 1996, kind of as my way of grieving when my father, Leon Berkowitz, died. And his parents, Rivka Granovetsky and Itzik Berkowitz, who I'm named after. Itzik was a canner and a farrier. And his older siblings, who I knew quite well, were all born in Yedinitz and immigrated to New York in 1906. I was fortunate to locate a 1960s interview with three of my Yedinitz-born aunts who spoke about life in Yedinitz. They mentioned the mud, Christian neighbors hiding them during the 1904 or 1905 pogrom. My great-grandfather, Moshe Berkowitz, was murdered by Polish workers at a farm he managed near Yedinitz. And when I got started in genealogy, one of my aunts was age 108. She was very lucid. She had a photographic memory, and she told me many details about life in Yedinitz from the eyes of a 9-year-old child. So I, like Alan and Yvette, probably spend 4 hours a day as volunteers on this important translation project. So I'll turn it back to Yvette.
Hi, everyone. I was born in Peru, and now I live in Switzerland already. I got married in America, met my husband in America, and 30 years ago, I came here to Switzerland. My grandparents were from Bessarabia. That's what I always knew. I actually didn't know exactly the towns where they were born. It took me more than 40 years to know the exact place where they were born. My grandmother was born in Yedinitz. My grandfather was born in Zaikan, which is one of the villages around Yedinitz. Like Roberta, for me, it was very important to know like, why Peru? Like, how did they make the money? Like, how was the trip? And I never got answers. So I've been researching, and I found I found the manifest in Lima, Peru, which for you guys, you just go online and whatever. But this, I found it a couple of years ago, and that together with other things made me want to write a book, which I'm still writing a book. I reconstructed the life, and I discovered all of the things I can tell you, but not right now. My interest with the Yizkor book is that while I was researching for my family, and while, like Roberta said, was writing for the book, the book was for me one of the most important sources to know about how was life before the war, like how did they live, like what happened, like why they emigrated, what is this pain that they are not telling us. And like Roberta said, she found her grandfather. I found in the book the only photo I possess of my great-grandfather, the father of my grandmother, that confirmed a family story that he was a banker. I said, banker in a shtetl, there were no banks. So actually, he's one is in the page 194, I think. He's one of the founders of the Loan and Savings Bank. So for me, this book is not just a book. While I was reading this book, I felt the pain of the people that were writing this book. I imagined how it was. And in the book, it tells us exactly how they felt. I was really right. So this book is very important, not only for them to give it to our generation, because they wrote it for us, but it's for us in this generation. Our job to understand their life, help them have this in English to make it reachable for everybody, to find their own answers to their own questions, and be able to find their own families. Thanks.
Thank you, Yvette and Ed. So one of the things that I found in doing my own research was there's a lot of information about the Holocaust and how it affected Jewish people throughout Europe, and in particular in Romania and Bessarabia. But I wanted to know what life was like, and the Yedinitz Yizkor book is given me that information. There's weddings, there's humor, there's honor, there's daily life, and there's religious and social and political articles as well. It's just an unbelievable collection. So I'm not going to go through all this. I know Eric Schwartzman can talk about back in the beginning of this project, but I want to talk about when the three of us took over. So based on, and these are all rough numbers, but based on what I saw, only 12% of the 1,000 pages, at 125 pages, was initially translated, and that to me is amazing anyway, because some of the articles were, like I said, they're all interesting articles. But Yvette invited me and Ed to come along for the ride, and with the help of incredible translators that we have that are also situated all over the world, including two that are on the call today. We have now translated or have assigned over 600 pages. So 60% of the book is now either online or in the hands of these translators, actively working on getting them completed. Sections 1, 2, 3, and 6 are almost all completed. There are 7 sections altogether, and we're very grateful to the people that are on this call, as well as others that have already donated. And I hope that donations continue to flow in so that we can continue this and hopefully finish this next year. So I'm a banker, so I like numbers. So I just want to give you an illustration of how the book is coming together. Where, as I said, we started at the beginning. We each, the three of us, as well as some of the people that have given donations of $250 or more, have picked out articles that they want to be translated and have provided a dedication to those. But besides those particular specific articles that people have chosen, we've gone from the beginning of the book. So we've already finished section 1 and 2 completely, and 3. We're now just starting section 4. Section 6 was translated, I believe, during the time that Eric was in charge. So that one's almost all complete. That was basically the majority of what the book had been translated at that time.
Ed, I'm Alan. I want to tell you, number 7, the memorial pages, we did begin, and people had begun sending me some information, but
Okay.
it was during the time when I was going through my divorce and one of my kids started having some challenges that have taken up most of the last number of years for me. Before you assign translations of memorial pages, and I've told Ed about this, I'll dig a little further. I think I have some of that stuff that I think I found a little bit of it the other day, 2 days ago. Let me find that before you start assigning that section out to anybody. And if I do find it, I will obviously forward it, get it scanned somehow and send it on to you. But I do recall that we had assigned a number of pages of that section out, and people had begun sending me things. But then when my life got turned upside down, it fell to the wayside. But I do recall that. So let me, before you start assigning that out, let me give another dig. And again, the stuff I had just noticed the other day, and I'll get back to you, Yvette and Ed.
Okay, great, thank you.
Eric, did we have anyone besides David Goldman doing the Yiddish translations back then, or was he? I know it was hard to find Yiddish translators.
He was the primary translator. There may have been one other person. I'd have to see if I can find the notes to see who it may have been, but David was the primary person we were working with.
There was Miriam Dashkin also.
It might have been.
If you need to, I have a very good friend in Mexico City. She's fluent in Yiddish, and I know she's done a lot of translations for the community in Mexico. If you're stuck, I can certainly ask her.
Okay, thank you, Daphne. That's very nice of you. Yeah, some of the translations that are online are just the first paragraph that David Goldman had translated.
Yeah, we did a lot of first paragraphs with the hope that that would be a teaser to try to raise more money for the rest of the articles. I think that was the idea, to give people a taste of a lot of different things.
So we do provide that partial translation to the translators so that they don't have to redo that section.
Ellen, from my experience, the experiment that we have done with Google Translate was very successful. At least for me, it saved about 60% of the time of translation.
You see, the professional translators, several of them have said, yeah, it's a little bit of help, but most of them said it didn't buy them much.
No, for me, it was very, very useful. It saved a lot of time. I thought that it will save 80%, but it saved about 60% of the time of translation from Hebrew to English.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think it's subjective. It's from translator to translator.
Yeah, there's a lot of unique terms and names and places. So, you know, Google Translate can do what Google Translate can do, but for the most part, the people that are the paid translators are not taking advantage of that. It's actually a hindrance to them.
Not only that, it's great for us, but not as a professional and serious publication. So it's like, if you want to understand more or less, that's great. But otherwise, it's not good to just copy paste in the Yizkor book.
Yeah, I see Daphne shaking her head.
Yeah, Google Translation is funny. You know, we
Mhm.
Hebrew, especially with Hebrew, we like to exchange funny translations, what Google does with things. They're
And-
funny.
And not only that, for example, many cities have names. So every time we get a translation, Alan, when you know, Alan, I don't know if you said about, can I say about the editing process a little?
Yeah, sure.
So for example, when we assign, the three of us have the book and the three of us split the book. So each of us have our own translators or volunteer translators or paid translators, and we assign the articles. And when we get them back, we, the primary translator edits it, and then we check also the names. So we also go and look in the original book, we look in the geography, and we check names and places and whatever. Then after that, we share the original and the original translate from the translator and our editing, and then we all look at it, and that's how we can see changes or not changes. And after that, Alan is the one who sends what we call the clean copy to Lance, and then it's being published online.
And we try to standardize it to make sure Bronstein is always spelt the same way for the town of Houghton, etc.
It is.
So
it
it's
is
interesting. Go ahead, Yvette.
So it is not that it will just have a translation. It has, we have, like Ed said, we have a submission text that everything has to have a certain level, like Arial 12, like the spaces and the whole thing. It is not just, we get a translator, we read it and publish. We spend really, besides the hours that translators spend, we also spend a lot of hours checking it according to the length of the translation. So it is a fascinating work. It's very challenging, but of course now with the time we got a little bit experts, because since we started, like Alan said, since we started in April, we have been having like a flute of wonderful translations, like one after the other. So we do it actually very careful. So because our aim is actually to publish this book. When it's finished, we would love to have the book published as a real book. Alan?
Yep. So just to chime in with that, so we do have wonderful translators, both volunteer and paid. The ones that are paid, they're all hired by Jewish Gen. So we don't have anything to do with the money. Everything is funneled through Jewish Gen. And they're the ones that make the decision whether or not to hire the translator, and some of it is due to they have the experience because they've worked on other Yizkor books with Jewish Gen, and their pricing of it's ranged between $20 and $30 per page. We have about 400 pages to go, and if we had to pay for all of that, it would be between $8,500 and $12,500 dollars. And we currently only have about $250 available. Now we've raised over $4,000 since April. And we've been very busy, obviously, since we have over 600 pages translated since then. Yvette mentioned that at the end of this, Jewish Gen has a separate publishing division. And so once the book has been translated and it's posted online, the next step for us is to work with the publishing end of Jewish Gen to actually print copies. How can you help?
Can I add something else? I would like to say that Alan, Ed, and I, the three of us, are 100% volunteers. So we are not paid. We have nothing to do. We do this as a love, as Yedinitzers, as descendants of Yedinitzers for other Yedinitzers. and that we have this amount of, that these pages we translated, that the cost is so low is because we also funded, the three of us, and we have also donations, but also we have extraordinary volunteer translators, because without their help, this book would take much more money, would be much more.
So each of us has donated at least $250, and actually it's a lot more. But we've also personally dedicated an article or two to our personal families. The memory of, I dedicated one to my mother and one to my aunt. My aunt came to New York with the rest of the family, but she ended up returning to marry a boyfriend, and she perished in the Holocaust. So this book means so much to me that I can learn about how my mother and her family lived, and unfortunately were killed in Yedinitz.
There's one person who's prominently mentioned in the book, probably in 15 articles, named Shimshon Bronstein.
Mm-hmm.
He was a fervent Zionist who was tortured by the Romanian authorities, and his great niece, Robin Hammer, has been a very generous supporter, and she has young children, otherwise she would have been here today. And it's fascinating to just chat with Robin, who obviously didn't know her great uncle, but her mother did.
So
I remember Robin being involved years ago. She was a nice person.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So as Yvette mentioned, at the end of this, we're going to publish, the Jewish Gen is going to publish it. Anybody who donates donations totaling $500 or more, or $500 totaling $500 would receive a complimentary book. I believe there's over 120 books that have already been translated and published by Jewish Gen. I know Yvette and Ed both have one of them from another town that they're connected to.
We have it from Bichan. Our families also come from there. So that book is extraordinary because it gives us an idea. I know that actually I am related to Bichan because when I was doing my family research, I looked in Jewish, in Jewish Gen, and I found lucky, a record of the marriage record of my great-grandparents, the parents of my grandfather. That's what I discovered, that my grandfather was the son of the second wife, like my great-grandmother was the second wife, that he was a widower, and that he married my great-grandmother who was from Bichan. I could get in that record the name of her father, and like that I could rebuild the whole Freifeld family, and that's why these books are also so important, because out of this blue you get these names and you get these stories, and your walls, your genealogical walls that are there for so many years, suddenly they open up, and it's like getting a high when you get one of these breaking the walls, what I call it, because yours like 10 years and nothing happens, and you're thousands of hours in the computer looking and researching and whatever. So yeah, so the Bichan book is wonderful too.
I need to, 10, 15 years ago, Ed may remember, I mentioned before, the gentleman, Mike Miller, and I'll tell a funny story about Mike Miller in a second, but years ago, Mike and I had made contact with two sisters here in New York City who were, I think, whose parents were prominent in running one of the Landsmannschaften groups here in New York City. And they were the source of some of the information that I have posted online to the Yedinitz homestead site that I had created years ago, that some of you may have seen. That Yedinitz is just the Yiddish word, obviously, for Yedinitz. But I have to find out what happened to those sisters. I lost contact with them years ago, but they had many papers related to the Landsmannschaften group. I'm guessing at this point they may have passed, but if they have, I'm hoping their families donated the papers to the Center for Jewish Genealogy here in New York City, which is a good resource for any genealogical Jewish for towns in Bessarabia and across Europe, and that they were an interesting resource. And they don't tell us, because there may be things in there that relate back to the village in Bessarabia that we come from. Certainly, it relates to the families that emigrated here to the New York City area. Funny story about Mike Miller, just to tell it real quickly. I was roommates with Mike back in college. We went to Albany State here in New York, and I lost touch with Mike for a few years after college. And then on, I think, the Jewish Gen site, I saw he had family surnames listed for the Yedinitz like I did. I reached out to him and said, "Is this the same Michael A. Miller I lived with in college?" And the response I got was something like out of Monty Python or something, where he wrote back, "I'll answer your question if you can answer these 3 questions." And then I obviously knew it was my old roommate. And it turns out we, both had grandparents that came from
Wow.
Yedinitz, and then we ended up living together in college just by chance.
Wow.
But it's a funny story. But I'm ashamed he's been involved with other groups, and I sent the invite to him. But Mike was always someone that, in addition to Ed, when we started this years ago, that was a good resource and helped us move along.
Yes.
But it was just always very funny to me that 2 kids ended up both at Albany State, and we both had family from the same little village.
I wanted to say welcome to Harvey.
Yeah, I just saw him. Yeah.
Hi, Harvey.
Hello, I'm sorry for my lateness, but I was out until just a little while ago, and I have contributed to the project. I'll probably contribute a little more. My interest is that my mother's father and his parents came from Yedinitz, and they came between 1895 and 1905. So I don't have, so far as I know, I don't think there were any remaining members of the family during the early 1900s and the Holocaust and so on. But I am really interested in the town. What I have found about the 19th century Winehouse family was that they were registered actually in Britain, or Cheney, as a lot of people say it. They were officially registered there, and I'm not sure whether they lived there or they actually all lived in Yedinitz, or whether they lived there for a while and then went down to Yedinitz. So I'm not sure I'm going to find any of my ancestors in the book, but I'm still interested in what life was like in the town.
Harvey,
So-
let me make a brief comment. I did my own research, and I think most American Jews tend to think, oh yeah, our grandparents came over, so we didn't lose anyone in the Holocaust. Could have been siblings, great uncles, their parents, cousins, because at most about 25% of Eastern European Jews emigrated to the US and Canada and South America.
It is possible. I haven't found any evidence of them in the stuff that's been put in the various indexed databases and so on. It is possible.
Yeah, one of the
So
things.
I don't rule it out
LDS
totally, and I am interested in what happened in the town during the time that the writers of the book memorialized. So that leads me to the one question that I have, is I know that some Yizkor books, one or two of the authors just happened to know a real lot about the history of the town. And so the book includes stuff going back into the early 1800s. So I was just curious what you've seen so far in the translations, whether that's the case with the Yedinitz book.
But I
Harvey,
learned that the
let me-
LDS actually has microfilm, and they have it in Russian. birth, marriage, death,
Oh,
divorce
yeah,
records.
I've seen all that stuff. Now I'm
But
getting
very
back
little
to,
of it's been translated or
Yeah.
indexed.
no, but I have seen what's there.
Yeah.
And
Not only-
I know what's there, so
Have you
I-
found
I
any
am working
translations?
in there. But what I'm curious about is I'm not talking about finding relatives now. I'm talking about life in the town of Yedinitz before the 20th century. I'm just curious to know whether there is much of the history of the town included in the book.
We found several articles that discussed mainly the agricultural community in and surrounding Yedinitz from roughly 1890 to about 1925.
Good.
There is also an article about the community, how the community was built, how it started, the beginning,
Good.
how many synagogues were there, the relationship with the neighbors, and all kinds of things. And Harvey, let me say that, like you, I always thought that everything is static, that everything was very dynamic. It is not, everybody was related to everybody in the towns around Yedinitz.
Yes.
So it is not like you know, like the Brichans with the Likans, with the
Yes.
with the Chernobyls, with the Hotiners, with the Belts.
Yes.
They were all one. I mean, it's a whole area. They were all intermarried. So it is very exciting, these kind of things, you know.
Yes.
So it's very.
Harvey,
I was glad to hear you mention, someone mentioned the agricultural stuff in the surroundings, because I assume that tobacco was something major there, because all of these folks were cigar makers.
And there is an article
At one
about
point or another, they made cigars. I know
There's a
about
couple
them.
of articles about tobacco.
Yeah,
Harvey,
good.
my question to you though is, I've not been, with the exception of a small subset of Russian records translated by Miriam Weiner, I have not found any index records of the vital data. Have you found them, or do you speak
There's
Russian?
some of it. It's been done by the Bessarabia Special Interest Group, and it's in the Jewish Gen stuff. It's not everything, but slowly but surely they're getting through the Russian, I want to say census, but as you know, it's not really the census. It's the updated lists of
The revisions.
the revision list. There you go. They are making their way through them, including Yedinitz. They haven't done them all, but they have done some. And so I have found, as I say, stuff from the like the 1850s and the 1870s, where, as I say, from Brichen, not from Yedinitz. This is almost really a side subject, but the point that people should know that people who lived in Yedinitz may not be in the vital records from Yedinitz. They may be in from Brichen, which was the district capital for a long time in the 19th century. So that's where I found my folks.
Well, I'll contact you offline if you don't mind, to pick your brain.
the
I want to
question
thank.
the question I've had, go ahead.
Okay.
So I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. I want to thank especially those that have already donated. And I hope that we continue to receive donations so that we can finish up the remaining 400 pages. Does anybody have any comments, any questions?
Yvette,
Yes.
I was born in Argentina.
Yeah, I know. I heard your accent. I heard your Spanish accent.
Yes, and I heard yours. And I know exactly how my family got there. So Anyway,
We need to talk, Daphna, because I would love to know. And for me, I mean, it took me many years to discover and find out why. But I can tell you more about it. It was a
get my email from Alan and we can Zoom. I don't want to take up everybody's time.
There are
Thank you.
also a number of people that emigrated from Yedinitz that ended up in Brazil. I don't know how to pronounce it properly. Recife. I don't know. But
Recife.
That's it.
Recife.
Recife, because I run a Schwartzman surname group on Facebook, and there are a number of people from Brazil who have told me their families also are from
Yeah,
Yedinitz.
mine too. My grandfather had a sister in Brazil, had a brother in Argentina. He was in Peru, and
Yeah, I have cousins in Brazil. I have cousins in Brazil and in Peru.
they were
Alan,
all related.
Alan, can you send me a PDF of this PowerPoint presentation? Because
Yeah.
I'd like to show it to the folks that are in my other group that may
Oh,
have
sure.
an interest in
Yeah,
it, may
I
get them
was
to
just-
donate.
I was just going to say, when I sent out the invitations, I mean, some of the people, some of you, or if not all of you, are on Jewish Gen as a researcher for Yedinitz, and those are sent blindly to you. And then when I sent the link to everybody blindly. But is everybody okay with sharing each other's emails?
I'm fine.
And I will send a PDF to this. We're thinking about doing a monthly newsletter with some updates, but I also am fascinated to hear more about each of your family stories. And if you want to send me a quick email, I'd be more than happy to include it in a newsletter that we send out to the group. So again, thank you very much for joining, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Alan, I can add before we go, I would love to say that you have, there is a Facebook group that from Yedinitzers. I don't know if you know about it. Alan, you are the one who started that Yedinitz group, no? Isn't it?
No, Eric started it.
Oh, Eric, that was Eric.
Mhm.
Also,
When did
Eric started, and that would be wonderful if we can make this group more active, because I think it's very important for all of us to share our stories, our discoveries, like help each other and cheer all of us. And we have in this group like wonderful experts in the field, like Zev, for example, is a wonderful musicologist. Actually, he's a klezmer expert. And we thought that maybe if you're interested, we can meet and then we can talk about different important things also around Yedinitz. And we would like to know.
Thank you. It was a very important center for that music.
Yeah, Zev, he's amazing. So we wanted to know if you would like also to have in the future to know also these kind of things to connect Yedinitzers from around the world,
Yeah.
That would be really nice.
We'll include the link to the Facebook group in
Cool.
Alan's email, distributing the minutes from the meeting, so to speak.
And thank you so much again
Very
for donating to the book. For if by any chance you would like also to volunteer if you have the expertise from translating from Hebrew or from Yiddish to English, and you would love to volunteer, that would be a wonderful opportunity to also help us make this book finish as fast as we can, and with the highest quality, and to give it back to our future for today and to our future generations.
And Harvey, I wasn't sure if you knew, based on what you were saying, that the translations that have been done so far during the time that Eric was the coordinator, as well as what we've done, is online and is accessible for you on Jewish Gen to read in English.
Good. Thank you.
Before we go, anybody would love to say something?
I would like to say that there is another source of information that I'm not sure that you are aware about it. There is a wonderful website of historical Jewish press. It is unfortunately is only in Hebrew and Yiddish, but there is a documentation of all the Jewish press from the end of the 19th century till today. And unfortunately, there was not a lot of Jewish press in Bessarabia, but there are a lot of articles of Yedinitz who came to Israel and published some articles and many memorial pages. So it is
What is
searchable,
it
but it is
called,
only in
Yossi?
Hebrew.
What is it called, Yossi? What is it?
Historical Jewish Press. Again, my family, my mother came from Poland. In Poland, there was a Jewish press from the end of the 19th century. There, I found many articles about my family from the starting of the 20th century. In regarding Bessarabia and Yedinitz, there are mostly memorial notice about Yedinitzer who passed away in Israel in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And so it is also a very interesting source of information where you can locate family members or something like this. Please look for historical Jewish press, and if you need any help with the Hebrew or searching somebody of your family, I will love to help you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And to add something about Yossi, Yossi has a very famous relative. His name is Yosef Kovrin. I don't know if you heard about Yosef Kovrin. And maybe if we can do in the future also like with Zev or with you, we can have a talk about these famous Yedinitzers that immigrated to Israel, and they were very important also in Israel, in the life of Israel, and how they lived afterwards. And what is the name? I forgot the name of the book of Yosef, which I read, but right now I don't remember the name.
In the Shadow of Destruction.
Exactly, it's called In the Shadow of Destruction by Yosef Kovrin. In page 8, you're gonna have, it talks about Yedinitz. I found the book through research because as I said, I'm writing my book, so I try to find as much as I can, and that's extraordinary what Yosef, little Yossi, tells about Yedinitz and how the war came and he was with his mother in Chernovitz, and then he couldn't go back. I mean, the family was totally split in 41, so they lost the traces. It's very upsetting, the story, which is absolutely true, but the description of Yedinitz is what you're gonna see in the book.
You want to mention the other book, the My Home Yedinitz?
Yes, so Alan and I are also, both of us, writing a book that's also about our families. And in this book, in the research, there is a wonderful book called Mein Shtetl Yedinitz. That's by Golda Goodman Kremer, and we would love to translate. This book is in Yiddish. It's staying since 1943 in Yiddish and hasn't been translated.
Buenos Aires.
It's from Buenos Aires. She's from Buenos Aires, but the book, yes, she's in Buenos Aires, but this book has not been translated in Spanish. So we are also, after we finish with this book, we would love to translate that book, because actually it's not a novel, but it's very autobiographical. So it has a lot of information about Yedinitz. Like you said, Yossi, you can Google, we do the Google Translate, which it's very impossible to read the book, because we try with the Google Translate for us to more or less see what's in the book. But then it's an extraordinary document for us Yedinitzers, descendants of Yedinitzers, to learn about the past.
It's 175 pages in the PDF.
Yeah.
That's this.
Well, thank you, everyone, and we'll hope to see you in a month or two.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sehr gesinnt.
Bye-bye.
And nice meeting you. Bye.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.